What's going on, everyone? Welcome back to another exciting episode of Attack Productions Tide Bankrupt Joints Game by Trevor. As today we go over another episode of Time Wars. And today we've brought ourselves all the way up to the first of the Fusion Warriors, Gotenks, taking on Majin Buu. And this time, will Gotenks' arrogance match his power level and take out Majin Buu? Or will Majin Buu once again just consume him for more power? Let's find out in today's matchup. What is going on, Trevor?
Hello! No, just coming back to make a fool of myself after a few months, but it's always fun to play after a long break.
And before we get into the actual video, I just want to cover a few things because this is our Time Wars series. The way we do this is that we try to cover either as close to the archetype that the leader is representing or as close to the theme of the character, whatever obviously comes first. If the leader has a theme to it, we try to match it as much as possible. If they don't, well, we do what we can to make it work. And there's no secret rares at all in this format. So it is what it is. And like Trevor said, he's actually been playing Digimon for a while, if you couldn't tell by the mat. So you're going to see some funny early moments of like the Digimon brain kind of taking over when it comes to like searching or even your mulligan, I think it was.
Yeah, so oh, this is a Dragon Ball channel, so I won't go into a ton of it. But basically, you mulligan your entire hand if you mulligan in Digimon. But in Dragon Ball, you choose what cards to go back, then shuffle, then draw what you want. Well, I sent back my entire hand because it's like, I don't want this hand. Well, I kind of wanted some of the hand. As you'll see on this turn, I charged and passed because I don't have any tap one and play cards because I sent my entire hand back.
And Adam is, much like you, does enjoy the Majin Buu decks. Adam actually didn't have a lot of experience going into this deck, so I will be sitting on the sideline during this match, kind of helping out as much as possible. And Trevor, you were kind enough to let Adam use your TCG Metal Leader, which is amazing, and I can't wait for their return.
Yes, this is the... I lent a good number of cards to Adam for the deck because he wanted to play it. And of course, at that point, I was like, oh yeah, I have this in my bag. It's perpetually in it because I love the way this card looks, especially the Unawakened side with the piece of chocolate. It's just so freaking cute. Yeah. I love it. And tried to explain the deck archetype in some way, but until you play this Buu deck like 6 or 7 times, it is hard to wrap your brain around.
Yeah.
Whereas I'm playing Gotenks, which is basically autopilot. So it's definitely, I would say, a rough matchup if you've not experienced or played the Buu deck before.
Yeah, there's definitely timing is a thing for the Buu deck, and we will see that at some point. I think it might be turn 2 or turn 3. I can't remember when it is, but there's some timing. Adam decided, he kind of, this is my decision. I'm sticking with it. And then in the later turns, he kind of did a little bit better in sequencing. And for you, you're using your ability, your leader, to do the searching by revealing a fusion card and then finding other pieces for it. There was a misplay there. Trevor does catch it, I think, on the following turn, though.
Yeah, so I did not place a card from my hand back at the bottom of the deck on this one, but I do it properly for the following turns. Read your cards.
Yeah. What makes this Buu so great is that, and I will say this is partly also due to you being gone so long. The Gotenks that's on the board has the ability to activate main where you could, it's either bounce it or put your draw to get your pieces back, but then you could pop a card. You just went straight into the attack just to get rid of the card ahead of time.
Yeah, ultimately it ends up being the same. I mean, maybe he'd use a negate on it. I don't know. But maybe he'd combo to try and save it for some reason. So, like, it's still worth swinging, especially whenever I'm not going to establish anything else this turn. So, rather than me just popping it to pop it, maybe in the very small off chance he'd spend some resource to try and save it. But realistically, he won't. But it's funner just to swing into stuff than just pop it off of effect.
So we got the Majin Buu hitting the board now, and this engine itself, unless you're playing against red, it's really hard to get rid of. Now, granted, yellow can also deal with it as well by blanking its skills, then going into it afterwards. But the card it gains barrier due to the Z stack, and it gains kind of like an extra life. So it takes two. It has to be KO'd twice in order to deal with it.
Yeah, I remember playing this deck for several weeks in a row, and then we played at Matt's house, and he played Vegito, and I stopped playing this deck from that point forward.
That's fair. I mean,
Because
Vegito does a lot of negging.
yeah, it does negging, and he does ignoring barrier neg. And I was like, well, if you're going to ignore barrier and then minus, I literally can't play the game. So then he killed me on like turn 2 or 3. It was insanely fast. I was like, well, there's nothing I can do. But in a green matchup where virtually nothing says ignoring barrier unless you spend like 4 on it, this guy can stick around a lot more.
Yeah. In so Adam used the ability to pitch this card and immediately played it afterwards, and after kind of making that choice, he learned like, oh, I can't go into the 4-drop now because in order to go up the boo chain, you have to do combo cards in your opponent's turn. So a lot of times, like if your opponent swings into a boo, it's great. You just combo card, and you could pay 1 after the battle and play this card. Now it's kind of like a whole new card, so it has 2 life again. And then the 4-drop itself has blocker, so it kind of allows you to, block with it and then go into the 6-drop chain. But like I said, that's during your opponent's turn. That takes energy. Adam did kind of get rid of his energy by playing the 2-drop, which is fine. He just needs to do this turn a little bit, like be wary of this turn because now he has no open energy to potentially negate your attacks.
Yeah, and it's one of those situations, kind of like I mentioned earlier, unless you're actively playing this deck or testing it on like Untap or something, then it's not something that you really realize because it plays completely different than a lot of other decks where you're going up the chain, you do it on your turn, it's less reactive. But this one, it's always on your opponent's turn, and you use it to just try and tap down your opponent's board. So honestly, Gotenks, whatever, if you like sequence it right on your opponent's turn, you can just completely demolish Gotenks. You can rest stuff, just slow down their momentum because everything's dual attack or swing once. So you just start resting stuff and you lose half your swings.
Yeah.
So
I was just gonna mention that you mentioned earlier, kind of like there was the joke at our shop that Gotenks is kind of like the autopilot deck, which it kind of is in terms of like it's a very ABC format. And we saw you go full on that decision this turn. You establish the 6-drop, which is a dual attack that does pop a card on play. It's 25k, and when you just by doing that one act, you get a ghost token, which you use to get a combo up your drop. You gain a marker on your unison. You draw off the Gotenks itself, but then you also get card searching from the other cards you use as a fusion piece. It's just good overall, like resource.
yeah, and this past turn, I've noticed especially like because I still watch all the videos that you guys put out. I've noticed a lot of matchups, especially like when Adam or Jake play, they will just not swing in the opponent's leader for like 4 turns. So, and they just leave people at 6. So what's really neat about this Gotenks deck is that Trunks that I played this last turn, you can tap 1 and take a life to force yourself down to 5. So it's kind of like playing around like people's tendencies as players at locals. You kind of figure out kind of how they like to play, and kind of forcing them into playing the way you want to play. And that kind of just now I've got homicidal clones available to push myself to 4, so all my super combos become active. So it was a really neat thing that I've never thought about doing before because like half of our locals are like, I'm going to kill you on turn 2 or 3, and then the other half of our locals are like, I'm not going to kill you until turn 9.
Yeah. They try to just focus more on controlling the board and go, your life's fine, I won't touch it. I will say that's also like for your particular build right now, because I did build your Gotenks deck because you sent me the list. You don't play Dormant, which normally with this, you're like, oh, cool, it's free. What was the decision not incorporating Dormant?
Because against this deck, against Boo, at most your opponent's swinging maybe 3 times in a turn because you establish one tall body and then the leader.
Fair enough.
So that was, of course, before I remembered that the leader could gain skills from your opponent's cards when a Z awakens.
Yep.
Which, might have changed my thought on Dormant. But that was like my initial thought was it's just a matchup thing. Like Dormant's not going to do me any good, so I splashed in one of the Majin Buu thwarting energy because I thought it was funny to use Buu against Buu. And then just clones and various other cost 1 negates.
And this was situations where I mentioned earlier, sequencing. Adam did swing with his leader first and did use the ability on the other Boo afterwards. And in this particular situation, you use the Boo's effect to eat, or more or less KO, the 6-drop on board, which it gives you more cards in your hand. But then Adam's Z leader can then take one of those keyword skills and pop it onto it, which this is really good with this leader because the leader has an auto which is not once per turn. Just when this card attacks, you discard 1 card, draw 2. So initially, you're allowing Adam to cycle 2 cards for 4 cards. Like he discards 2 cards to draw 4 cards, which is just really strong now.
Yeah, and if he hadn't charged that shocking regeneration, he could draw even more cards for literally free. I love that extra card. It's probably my favorite extra card ever printed, just mostly because I'm biased to Boo, but it's just straight value. Like everybody used to talk about how like you have your Overrealm draw 1s or like draw 2, trash 2 kind of effects. Well, this one is I use it because I'm a Z leader and now I get to draw cards.
Yeah.
It's free. And I don't even have to lose my drop area and I can use it later. But
So we're sitting in a situation where Adam's at 3 life, you're at 3 life, and you were debating on the longest time of swinging for your leader. And we see Find Them is here. Was that your ultimate decision why you switched? You're like, oh wait, it's yellow. I probably should pivot.
It was a situation where I've got a ton of cards in my hand already, and I want to swing at this Boo, and I want him to get burn stuff to try and save the Boo because I can swing so many times this turn that free safety net that it has is less free. So basically force him into doing this as opposed to using other effects. So I go ahead and get this one out, and now he's like, well, now I've got blocker. I have to be KO'd twice. So now if he blocks, then I can swing into it one more time because now it's rested since I have a Unison on board and can burn some more cards in his hand.
But your Gotenks should be active. I don't think you've only swung with it once so far. I'm not sure why it's still in rest mode, unless I missed something.
Yes, that might be the case. I know he time magics me at some point in this match, but it wasn't this turn.
No, it was the turn before.
So
yeah,
it just might be habit.
Yeah. Here you are trying to go into that Boo to clear it out because he did block that first attack. I think it's one of the situations where you don't block the weaker, or you don't block the first attack, just combo out because I feel like you're less likely to combo out of attack going into his lead than you are going to his chain. And then he should have blocked on the second attack.
Yeah, and something else I kind of thought about after the game is even swinging into this thing as much as I did. The regular 2-drop one that he has a second copy a stack of in his Z deck is honestly strong enough to just play out. And just get another 20k dual, 20k swings in. So like I was worried about him going further and further up the chain, but really I should have just been trying to swing at his face, and because he would just reestablish a new 2-drop on a following turn anyway. So
So here we're going over, he's using the effects correctly. He's discarding up to 2 cards to get the 10k boost, which it kind of not only procs getting the dual attack, but now procs like the leader's ability. Now the leader is going to gain dual attack because of this. And because he pitched, it has an ability to fetch a card back when it's discarded. So he fetched back the 6-drop as well. But go straight into the Goku. Was not expecting this play at all, but I think it was a very smart play. But if you happen to have Dorm in your hand, it almost kind of shuts you off and shuts him off all of a sudden with all the advantage he just gained. But he wasn't aware of that at the time.
Then he rests my last energy. I use the Goten and Trunks, limit 1, combo from the drop. This deck can just generate so much Z energy. It's probably one of the few decks where I feel like could go up against, what is it, Explosive Dance? New red floodgate card.
Yeah, as long as you are getting rid of... Yeah, I want to say yes and no, because the Gotenkses themselves are 25k, but all of your engine itself is like 15k or 1k. And for Explosive Dance, you have to get rid of the equivalent power of the card attacking. So
gotcha.
It does get a little bit tight, but you can always side in like the other Gotenkses that are like 30k, or the other ones are 20k or 25k, and you working with that, yes, you could theoretically do that though. But here he's just getting straight advantage right now against you.
Yeah, it's the amount of pressure from this point forward is kind of frightening. So at this point, I'm like, well, I now need to kill him. So if you were running Secret Rare land, you could sell Zeno this turn. But of course, Time Wars, we don't do that.
Yeah.
So I have to think of other ways to play around it. And I see him discard this Riposte. And I'm like, yes, I can do it. He's probably got 1 in hand. This is a turn because I've got a way to stop it.
That was an interesting decision. I wish he was here for that. I don't remember what his hand was exactly, because I was only really paying attention to what was happening on the board itself and not actually what you're seeing in your guys' hands. And yeah, I saw both that and the cooler. I'm like, cooler, I understand, but the gate. But we do see there is one right there in his hand. We can see the edge of it right now.
Yeah, and cooler in this Boo deck. Once you get to this point, is so hard to play with him choosing to play the Goku. Like if he was just going straight tall, he'd have access to cooler on my turn because he only needs 1 yellow on his turn to go further up the chain. But choosing to go into the Goku instead on the previous turn to try and kill me, which clearly it almost did. I'm at 1. Kind of limited his ability to use that cooler counter on his turn since he was now at 4 total. And I used the Gotenks effect to pop that 8-drop since trying to pop the 4 isn't possible since it has barrier. Then we swing here. He ripostes. I did Doria.
Doria, like... I definitely believe he did not see that coming at all.
Yeah, and then he discards the 1 for that, and then he goes Nimbus.
Which, I mean, at this point, he has to do something. So, I mean, like, having a backup is great, especially in this case, because now you're limited on what you can attack with. And, of course, he just so happened to have that negate in or I think he got it from his life.
He got it from his life.
Yeah.
I was like, because I literally saw him pick it up, and then I turned my card sideways, and it was still in his hand, and he went, "Oh, for army reinforcements." I'm like, God bless.
So there goes that one, and then passing over the turn here. I mean, the fact that it came down to luck of the life in this situation is enough, I guess, that the timeline wants to stay intact as we go into what may be the final turn. Let's find out. You are tapped out. You do have nothing on the board that can benefit you right now.
I don't know what to talk about. I got 10k combo on the board.
That's true. You do have 10k worth of combo on the board. Here he's pitching. He's just gonna get the 5k boost, but that still is enough to proc the leader's ability. To, in this case, I guess gain dual attack again. Yeah, which of the two, double strike or dual attack is the best way to get because you're only at 1 life. And he gets, like I said earlier, more draws out of this.
And he needs cards in hand.
Yes.
I tore through his hand last turn between Nimbus and the Piccolo and the -6 on my Gotenks unison or Gogeta unison. So he burned through some cards last turn, and I've got a pretty thick hand on my end to kind of combat this onslaught that he's kind of putting out at me. And this is a ruling where it works for Bobbity, but not for this boo to play it.
Correct,
You
yes.
still get other effects.
Yeah, if this was the promo Bobbity leader, the Majin Buu would hit the board. But in this situation, it does not. It doesn't. It instead, like I mentioned earlier, I think it cycles a card back to your hand.
Yeah. And my main problem with this deck, aside from obviously the Vegito matchup, which is purely a locals issue at the time, is that it only had 1+10k, which is why I fused the old blue boo into it whenever I ran this build.
Mm-hmm.
But now that new promo boo is just so good that the deck now is a million times more fluid.
Now, unfortunately, Adam is out of cards in his hand. He has a couple options, but unfortunately, nothing he had was valid. After this turn, I mentioned to him he should have actually held on to one of those combo cards, preferably the Boo one, to get you to combo cards out of your hand. Then he could have actually reestablished another chain, pitched a card off that chain to make it a 20k dual attack and give it at least 2 more attacks. And I don't know if that would have made a difference in this match or not, because I can't remember how much hand you had left over afterwards, Trevor.
Yeah, I think it was fine. It would have been, I think we were like, it would have gotten another 5k out of my hand, and I had 2 5ks in hand. So ultimately, it would have been the same.
But with that being said, that is today's match. Thank you all for tuning in. Keep in mind there are buttons and links down below. Feel free to click them to there for a reason. And bye. And next time.